Joining us now, Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser and Matt Crane, Executive Director of the Colorado County Clerks Association. Matt, I want to start with you because I think when people think about this issue, they think of it as a non-bipartisan issue anymore. That's obviously not the case. We have a Republican and a Democrat on. Thank you both for being here. What do you think about what's happening, and how are county clerks in Colorado? I went to Colorado State, so I know some of them well. How are county clerks in Colorado taking this and interpreting what the White House is doing and this administration is doing?
Sure. Well, first of all, good morning. Thanks so much for having me on this morning. The request from the federal government to talk about elections, that kind of thing, nothing about that is new. But what is highly unusual was this request to access voting systems and to have CISA get hands on keyboard to touch the voting systems. I've worked in elections in 25 years at the state, local, and federal level. I've never heard of a request like this before. I used to consult for CISA from 2019 through earlier this year, 2025, on election security matters. CISA would have never asked under that time, under the first Trump administration or the Biden administration, to put hands on keyboard to get a hold of the voting system. So it makes clerks very, very uncomfortable that the federal government is going beyond their power and potentially putting clerks here in Colorado in a criminally liable situation to access their voting systems.
And Mr. Attorney General, this criminal liability is something that is very much on the table because the New York Times reported on July 2nd, the Justice Department explores using criminal charges against election officials. And I'll read this one quote from the story. Senior Justice Department officials are exploring whether they can bring criminal charges against state or local election officials if the Trump administration determines they have not sufficiently safeguarded their computer systems. Such a path could significantly raise the stakes for federal investigations of state or county officials, thrusting the Justice Department and the threat of criminalization into the election system in a way that has never been done before. Attorney General Weiser, this just strikes me as being wildly subjective, this determination of not sufficiently safeguarding your computer systems.
It's outrageous. I have no idea what statute they are purporting to administer, because what Matt said is there is an organization, CISA, who is there to support the idea that they're demanding information or threatening criminal prosecution. It's the opposite of the role of the federal government, which is a supportive role to provide guidance on best practice, to provide feedback on how to manage these systems. They don't ask for private information historically. That's never been done before. They don't threaten criminal prosecution. This is a real threat to the relationship between the federal government and the states, and it bears emphasis. The states are, under the Constitution, the authority over elections. I went to the Supreme Court in a case involving Colorado's elections on this principle. The states control elections. We won that case. This is not something that can be relitigated 200 and close to 50 years in our history of a nation, and obviously with a constitution well over 200 years old. I'm just surprised we're here and look forward to getting to a normal place as soon as we can. In Colorado, as you noted with Matt, this is a bipartisan issue. We believe in secure elections. We've got high voting rates. I don't understand what the DOJ is thinking about.
And you guys have been the blueprint for a lot of early voting and voting by mail that the country started doing more in earnest a few years ago. Director Crane, one of the things that is really important, both apparently the founders thought it was important for the states to handle elections. It has helped to make sure that it is hard to hack and steal elections, national elections in this country, because it is so decentralized. It seems that this administration is trying to do the opposite, to have the federal government much more involved in elections than ever before. What's the danger in that?
Well, it's just like you said, one of the advantages, one of the reasons our elections are more secure than in other places is because we don't have federal elections. It's up to each of the 50 states and the territories to decide how they want to hold their elections. Do they want to deliver mail ballots automatically? Do they want more early voting? Do they want to focus on more, in-person voting? So that's part of why our elections are secure, because you can't, something to do in Colorado, it will not be the same in New Jersey. And that's a really important fact. The other part of it, too, you're exactly right. the Constitution gives these powers to the states. I mean, yes, under the Constitution, also another part that's important, the part of the Constitution that delegates this to the federal government is it goes to Congress. It shouldn't be coming out of the executive branch. So there's a very limited role for Congress in that. And then it should be at the state level and at the local level. And that's where it belongs. Here in Colorado, as you said, we've made great advancements in both access and security over the last 25 years. We want to be able to chart our own course and to continue to do that and not be held back or held down by the federal government.
You know, Attorney General Weiser, all these moves that we're talking about, both in your state in Colorado, but also what we were just talking about from the Justice Department and, not sufficiently safeguarding things, is lending credence to this theory. I'm not going to say that it's a conspiracy theory just yet, but a theory out there on the left that the Trump administration is laying the groundwork to, quote unquote, steal the 2026 midterm elections. How concerned, one, have you been hearing that concern from folks in Colorado? And two, how concerned are you that what you're seeing happening in Colorado right now lends credence to that concern?
I have heard that concern again and again, and I give the answer that Matt just gave. In the back of Matt's picture is Washington crossing the Delaware, an action that lives on in American history as a show of what our founders thought, which was we wanted to be independent, we wanted to be a democracy, and we engineered this republic in a way that it's very hard to do what you just said. And this is important. In other countries where you can have a national government manage elections, you can have what you just talked about, stealing of elections. But here, because it's done locally, and this is part of our Constitution, that's a protection against tyranny. That's a protection against abuse of power. So I have heard the concern. As for the specific action, sadly, this administration has taken so many lawless actions where I can't begin to understand what they're trying to do, that this is in line with those other actions. There's been threats of criminalizing local government officials because states have different approaches on immigration. In Colorado, for example, we have a law that says Colorado law enforcement does law enforcement. They don't do immigration enforcement. That's within the rights of the 10th Amendment of us as a sovereign state. We've been threatened with criminal prosecution over that as well. We've got a civil suit on that. We went to court 3 times last week because the administration withheld funds illegally in a number of, in 2 cases, and in 1 case, they're undermining the Affordable Care Act. So there is, frankly, so much lawlessness we've had to deal with that I'm not sure I can see this as a different form of lawlessness as others. I just think the problem is this administration isn't doing what past ones have done, which is before they act, they should ask lawyers, is what we're doing illegal here? And in many cases, this administration, if they had done that, we wouldn't have to bring these court cases.
Mr. Director, last question to you here. You know, one of the things that we have seen since the lies of 2020 is the dangers to both election officials and volunteers because of the conspiracy theories. This kind of action from the administration feels like it has the ability to make those kinds of threats more dangerous. Do you have that concern?
I 100% have that concern, and I'm so glad you brought that up. Look, 6 weeks ago in Southern Colorado, we had an election office get firebombed. And it appears the suspect is an election denier, obviously unhinged. But then I hear things out of the courtroom where he had his first court appearance recently that there were people in the gallery saying it's about time something like this happened. We need more of this to happen. It's a very scary environment for election officials, as you've said, who have stood up against the lies of a stolen election back in 2020. And let's be clear, the clerks who push back on this request, they're Republican clerks. Right. And it doesn't matter if they're MAGA, conservative, what part of Republican, they stood up, and we're so proud of them because they stood up and told the administration, no, we're not going to do this. It's illegal. We're not going to be a part of this. And that puts them both at risk politically and, quite frankly, personally. And the environment is very scary right now, but we're very proud of those folks for standing up for the rule of law.
And so are we. Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser and Matt Crane, thank you both very much for coming to the weekend.